Hi, everyone. Welcome to another amazing topic of conversation. First of all, I want to thank my sponsors, the Health Channel, and their health fair. So please join and experience everything related to health. If you ever need office space or a virtual office or an office for just 1 hour, Alexa's workspace can help you, can accommodate you in every way. And for all those, especially women that want to become their own bosses and want to become entrepreneurs, Hermosa Mujer will be able to provide you with that with an ecosystem on a virtual platform. So, Adam, thank you so much for joining me today.
The pleasure.
So, let's start with Aaron's legacy. Tell me what Aaron's legacy is. I know that your topic is a little hard. I cannot deny it, a little hard for many people, but also you have been a blessing to many, and I can share that to me as well.
Thank you. Gladys, it's a pleasure to be here. Aaron's legacy, first of all, my name is Adam Pollock. I practiced law for about 15 years. I was a psychology major in college, and I always wanted to be a therapist, a psychologist, but at the last minute, I decided to go to law school instead.
Why? Why
Why? I
that?
think I think because when I went to college and I realized that there were answers to so many questions that I had about growing up in a divorced home and having a lot of dysfunction in the home, and I saw that I wasn't alone and that there were solid answers. I thought, wow, this is a field that I really gravitate toward. But then when I saw in my senior year that there were a lot of let's just say nutty people in the field, I thought this might be a occupational hazard I don't want to take on. So I went to law school instead, but I never really got out of my brain that psychology is a place for me. And I've kept up with all of the studies and I've kept up with all the different theories and schools of psychology. So it's been a real uh, passion of mine to stay close with it. So and I've also been a person that has always been able and willing to help anyone that comes to me, whether it be for law advice, for business advice, for counseling. Through my Torah background and through becoming a counselor and an arbitrator, I've always been a very willing participant to help anyone that knocks on the door. And about 5 years ago, a friend of our family and a very serious, well-known, respected, 30 plus year experienced clinical psychologist, a doctor of clinical psychology, called on me and she said, I don't know what to do. I've got a very serious problem with my family. Can you help me? And I was able to help her in a very short period of time, and she was ecstatic and started sending me more families. And over the past 5 years, we've been doing more and more family situations, and this idea of estrangement has come up. Estrangement is when one family member cuts off at least one other family member and has no contact with them. So we started getting these families that had estranged, and trying to deal with them has been something that I've worked on for 5 years until recently I decided to start Aaron's Legacy, which is named after Moses' brother Aaron, who was a peacemaker, a pursuer of peace. And now we're doing this full time.
This is amazing. So, my first question to you is, when somebody decides to cut off like someone from the family, it's either because A, B, or C, and they're doing much better. How do you go back and rekindle that relationship and move forward? Because sometimes, and for example, friends that you know that they're not good for you. You
Right.
cut off your friends, and it's a whole different story. But with family, it's a little bit different. So why is it okay when we hear, for example, growing up, the parents, oh, that so-and-so is not good for you. They're a bad influence on you. So why is it different with family?
You know, there's really an ideological struggle going on right now, Gladys. 27% of the country was estranged in 2020, and most of the researchers say that it's gone up now to about a third. 33% of the country has no contact with a family member. 40% of people in the country have experienced estrangement at some point in their life. Um, the average time of the estrangement is about 4.5 years, and it's known as the silent epidemic because people don't talk about it. There's a shame and a judgment involved. But to answer your question, there's an ideological battle going on right now. On one side, you have the estrangement ideology that says that we, as individuals, radical individualism is more important than family, more important than community, more important than anything. Following our individual needs, our mental health, finding our bliss, having pure relationships in which we get what we need out of the relationship or cut it off. This has become sort of a zeitgeist or a movement of the estrangement ideology. And online and many therapists are just filled with this concept that they feed that really pollutes the parental roles that we had in the past. On the other side, we have what's called familial ideology, which is what we grew up with, where family comes first, where parents are to be honored, where you have a traditional role of respecting and appreciating your parents, and it's a lifelong relationship. And when this breaks down, either because of real trauma or real abuse, which does happen, but that's the minority of the cases, most of the time it's because of online influences. It's because of therapists who are in favor of cutting off parents, because as the Israeli sociologist Ilus says, that today we map things backwards. We look to see where there's a dysfunction in your life, and we find that there's something that's unhappy or wrong with you. Let's look back into your youth. And what determines whether you had a dysfunctional home growing up? The fact that you don't feel well today. So there's a
So
tendency
blaming someone.
there's a tendency to want to blame the parents, and the parents are really getting a raw deal in this because so many of them have no idea what they did wrong. They just get a no contact letter, which is a term that is used so often today. I've gone no contact with my parents. If you go online on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, you'll see so many support groups which have become the chosen families, replacing the biological families, urging people to be courageous, to do the right thing and cut your parents off. And this pressure is causing so many young people who really, maybe they had a difference of opinion with their parents. Maybe they had political differences, which is now 20% of the country. There's a difference between children and parents with politics, um, and as a cause for estrangement. It could be a trauma that they experienced and their parents had no idea. And then all of a sudden,
Correct.
the parents
They
get this
have
letter
no
saying,
idea
cut me
because
off.
they never got instructions.
I'm sorry. That's right. That's
The
right.
kids didn't come with instructions like
That's
this is
right. There's no such thing as a perfect parent. And we've all made mistakes, and we're all going to continue to make mistakes. But to be cut off from our children and our grandchildren because of those mistakes is really unfair and extremely damaging. It's cataclysmic to the family, to the parents, to the grandparents, and it's not good for the child either, because this is the most important relationship we will ever have in our lives. The parent-child relationship. This is where the greatest support comes from. And when that relationship is destroyed, the child suffers greatly as well.
But Adam, on one sense, like, yes, you have the groups that are going, okay, be courageous, or the therapists that say this is not doing well for you. And then on the other hand, you're coming in and saying, no, we need to fix this.
Right. It's difficult because what happens is the typical scenario is there are tens of millions of parents and grandparents who have been estranged. Their children want nothing to do with them. And so they're the ones that typically come and reach out and say, what can I do? Now, this
It,
is
the parents are the ones that reach out,
the
not.
parents are the ones that reach out. The parents are the ones that are in pain.
Okay.
They're in grief. They say it's worse than a death because the child's still alive. It's ambiguous. Will I ever see them again? And so typically what we do is we ask the parent to send an amends letter, a letter of amends saying, look, I didn't know that these problems that you have existed and that I had blind spots, didn't see them. You obviously must have estranged me for your own mental health and had good reason to do that. I'd like to get into therapy with you. I'd like to sit down with you and discuss how we can transform this relationship that is so hurtful to you into one that is positive. And about 60% of the children respond to that request. And then once we get the kids to the table with the parents, we have a very good chance of reconciling. The difficulty in many cases is getting those children to want to respond. They've built up such a barrier and they have so much animosity and poison that they've been filled with that very often that they're not interested. The average period of time of an estrangement is 4.5 years, 4.5 years is the average time. And about 75% of the estranged kids and parents do reconcile. So that's the good news, but it's so painful and difficult for the parents and grandparents.
So how do you bring, let's talk the in between, from the moment that they reach you to the moment that you reach the other side. Give
So,
me some examples.
so the first thing that we do is we reach out to the children. If the parent wants me to write that letter, I will. And the goal is to get them to hear us out, to hear the parents out, to hear that there is a possibility for a new relationship, a transformed relationship, one that meets their needs. In this scenario, the parent has no power whatsoever. If they're defensive in any way, if they are in denial in any way, even if they have no idea that they did anything wrong and they think they were the perfect parent, if they fight back in any way or push back in any way, they have no chance. So this is not like a divorce where one side says one thing and the other side says another thing, and this is a situation where the parent has no power whatsoever and really has to just humble themselves and listen with empathy and take responsibility and try to understand where the child has a grain of truth to what they're saying and how they can try to figure out how to move forward. Now, if the child responds, the first thing that we do is we meet with the child separately and we meet with the parent separately. And we try to find out where there's a disagreement, what the source of the estrangement was, and where we can find common ground. Once we figured out what exactly is the problem, and we convey that to the parent can begin to understand exactly why the child has felt the way they have. Very often, Gladys, it's boundary issues. Today, with that phone, parents are on the phone with the kids 4, 5, 6 times a day. And an otherwise good kid, his new wife might come in and say, that's it. I can't take it anymore. Your mother's driving me crazy. She's driving you crazy. She's disrupting the flow of our house. They want to see us every week. Enough. And typically, men side with their wives in this situation because they don't have really the strength. The wife may be their best friend. And so a good person may just walk away from their parents. That's one of the 8 different pathways to estrangement that we've identified, the researchers have identified. But if, let's say it's something like boundaries, we can structure an agreement where
Correct. That's the easy part.
That's the easy part. Is
That's
one
the easy part. Okay. You're not going to see them once a month.
once
You're going to see
once a
them
week,
once a
once a
month,
month.
once a month.
What would make you happy, child? Right. And
Yeah.
mom, you have to back off. And if you don't meet these guardrails that we're setting, then you're gonna be back here again.
But with that example, I think it's a very easy example because then you can negotiate like what would be the best
The harder examples are
scenario.
the hardest examples, Gladys, are where the child sees a trauma or a toxic situation or a narcissistic parent that are these vague terms. They're not psychological um, diagnoses. They're just an immature mother. That one of the most popular books ever written in self-help is "My Mother is an Immature Mother." How do you defend that when you're a parent? My child estranged me because I'm immature. So those are the more difficult ones. We try to drill down further and further. What really bothered you? Well, she didn't like the clothes that I wear and didn't let me wear the clothing that I wanted to wear, and that was traumatic to me. Or they didn't let me stay out when I wanted to stay. Things that would never have been reasons for estrangement 20 years ago. We find that these are triggers for kids today, for adult kids today, and we try to work through that as best we can.
So let me ask you something. I see all this, but there's sometimes, and I call it like the void, like one talks here, the other one talks here, and there's like a complete void in the middle. I also call it like looking at the movie, one sees it in color, the other in black and white, or one goes to the same movie in different theaters, and it's a completely different story. So how do you bring story A and story B or close that gap so that they can see eye to eye?
One of the things that we do, Gladys, is we don't require an alignment of the history. They can think one thing, another one can think another. That's not what's important. What's important is how do we go forward? Because if you need an alignment of what's happened in the past, if you need an agreement on what's happened, you'll never get anywhere. You'll spend your life just
Correct.
fighting.
But bringing that person to the table requires some kind of alignment, some kind of understanding. Like, I'm not sitting with this person because this, and this, and I'm not ready to move forward.
Right. So this is where the parent acknowledges all of the things that the child has said and takes responsibility for them. Even though it may not be as genuine as we would like it to be, you have to find the kernel of truth to what they're saying, acknowledge that you have blind spots, and acknowledge that you might have done some things that you weren't aware of. And
So, in other words, becoming the parent,
in other words, becoming the what?
the parent or the grown up.
Well, the parent, it's beyond becoming a parent
Or the
according to the
grown
rules
up, in
that
other
used to
words.
exist. Now, it used to be that the parent was the parent and they were respected. Now the parent has to earn the right to be with the child.
Or
It's such a
respect.
change in dynamics.
Wow. Okay, next, my other question. And I don't know if we're gonna finish on time because this one is when there are serious problems. For example, siblings, that there's really a serious problem that you cannot move forward. How do you deal with that?
Siblings are the most difficult to reconcile because very often neither side has motivation. They're both more or less satisfied with the situation being estranged. Um, so very often, we just don't see siblings coming in and wanting to be reconciled. And whatever happens, happens. But when they do, it is a difficult situation because they have very different views of what happened. Very often, one child did more caretaking to the parents, and the other child also received perhaps the same amount of money under the will, and they feel that that's unfair, or one child was favored growing up and the other one wasn't. So there are very deep and long-lasting difficulties with siblings that are difficult to work through, for sure.
But most of the things that you have mentioned was really not the siblings' problem. It was really the parents,
Correct, correct.
right?
But just like with parental alienation, when one parent poisons the children against the other parent,
Okay,
uh,
that's a different story. Yeah.
it's sort of similar. If a child grows up feeling resentful because his brother or sister got all the attention and all the love and all of the acceptance, and the other one grew up having to live with that, that's not either one's fault, but it's difficult to unwind.
Have you had, I know that the most difficult relationships are parents, siblings, but have you had cases, for example, with all-time friends?
You know, that I would love to see the statistics on that. It's probably well over 50% of good friends who have estranged. I
Yeah.
haven't, and I would really love to. I would really love to have that sort of situation where maybe a third friend called me up and said, "Look, my two friends love each other. They haven't seen each other for 20 years because of a stupid fight. Can you help them?" I would love that opportunity. I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, don't be surprised if you get the first call.
Okay.
Adam, thank you so much. I think this is a really good opportunity for those who want to come closer and like literally give closure to estrangement and bring back their family. Where can they find you?
They can go to aaronslegacy.com, two A's, AARONS legacy.com, and check us out, send us an email, join the family.
Thank you again. And to everyone, thank you for joining. Until next week, and let's all pray for peace in the world.
Thank
Be
you,
safe.
Gladys. Thank you.